morning, paper crafters. This is a shot of my Stampin' Up! And paper crafting corner of my studio. And I've had some questions about how I store some things, so I'm going to take you through a quick 10-minute tour of my studio. Future videos will show the individual items and how they're done. So let's get started. The unit that you're seeing directly ahead of you is a modular interlocking storage unit that I designed and Bob built for me. It was designed primarily around 12 by 12 paper and paper stacks. And then I've tried to make this primarily all Stampin' Up, but this corner houses all of my stamping and scrapping supplies, with the exception of the current Stampin' Up! Embellishments and stuff that I keep, and the immediate supplies that I keep on my work table, which I'll show in another video when it's cleaned off. Okay, let's get started. To start with, you'll see the top of the shelf, and that is where I store supplies of things that I need to refurbish, such as Starbucks bottles. The yellow containers that you see up there are Nestle Quick containers. These are fabulous for storing stuff in because they're uniform in size and they line up really nicely on a shelf. The 3 boxes that you see in the front left corner of that very top shelf is my Christmas cards, which I'll be pulling up for another video here in the next week or so. They're all done. Some still need the inside stamped, and then they're ready to address and go in the mail. I'm going to walk a little closer and show you. I'm going to start with my 8.5 by 11 paper storage, because this was what inspired me to do all of my paper storage this way. I got the idea from Carissa Wiley here on YouTube, and what she did was she took 8.5 by 11 page protectors, cut them off at the hole to narrow them down, put a label on the end. Now this is how I store all my scraps for every color, and it is like it serves as a divider on the shelf, and then the full stacks, full sheets set behind it. I've done the same thing with, here's my neutrals and my end colors, and then I've used the same concept using the Paper Studio paper keepers that holds all of my 12 by 12 cardstock. And in each paper keeper, I have one of the page protectors to store the scraps for that particular color. I do the same thing with all of my 12 by 12s, whether it's foil, glitters, and my Designer Series paper, which is this shelf here. And I keep all of my current Designer Series paper in the front, followed by all of my other Designer Series papers from past catalogs in alphabetical order. On the top shelf, this is how I store all of my past catalogs, my All Occasions catalogs. And these are in shipping envelopes with the string tie on the front, and then they have a back pocket, and that's where I keep retired lists and wish lists. And I have one of those for every single catalog. And they are, sorry about the phone thing, and then they are labeled on the outside so I know which. I've taken and photocopied the spine and labeled them so I can know which catalog is in which envelope. Down below, these 5 by 7 ring binders hold all of my paper pumpkin remnants, and then the stamps for each one is stored in a die sleeve in a box next to it. These 3 boxes are my current Stampin' Up! Stamps sets, complete with their dies. As you'll see here, it says current Stampin' Up! Box 1, number 3, and then it says that this has a coordinating die. If it has a punch, then that would have a punch sticker next to it. These next 3 boxes are, this is past Stampin' Up! 6 by 6 packs. This is my address list of birthdays and anniversaries, and that didn't work out well. Things never work when you want them to. My paper sorted by month of all of my stamping friends' birthdays and anniversaries. Hopefully this year I'll get to put that to use more. And then this is my current Stampin' Up! Embossing folders. The 3 drawers that you see here, these were from a previous unit that I used, which was a recycled entertainment center, and these drawers hold all of my fibers, and they're not Stampin' Up! Fibers. They are all the yarns and ribbons, strings that I've collected over the years. I don't use them a lot because I primarily use them in scrapbooking, not on cards, because they add bulk, so I try to keep my yarns and fibers on my cards to a minimum. I also have 3 smaller boxes. This particular one holds all of my alphabets from Studio G. This one holds all my themes and calendar year type stuff. And I'll explain more about themes, calendar year type things when I talk about my scrap rack. Down below is all of my Recollections cardstock, and the shelf below that is my light box, my cinch, my watercolor, tubes and supplies and brushes. And then I start with my paper stacks. That's primarily cardstocks, die cuts with a view, that kind of thing. And then I start with my paper slabs by company, Paper Studio, die cuts with a view, Craft Crate, Martha Stewart, and I have 2 shelves of those. The magazine rack, or magazine boxes, those are my subscriptions from the United Kingdom of crafting, paper crafting. And they all come with, each issue comes with stamps or an embossing folder or dies or a combination thereof. And then they give you lots of ideas on how to use the sets that they sent. This shelf holds my glitters, embossing powders, embossing tools. One of my favorite things is my inks. This whole front row is all current colors of Stampin' Up! The back row is all retired colors, and then this one on the end is all of my in colors. Now I have them, when I first started with Stampin' Up!, I couldn't afford to spend a lot of inks, and that was on inks and stuff, and that was 15 years ago. So I had very minimal supplies of the big ink pads, but they offered the spots in boxes by color family, so I stocked those up, and then every time they came out with the new colors, all I did was buy the spots and the re-inkers. And then each one has a dauber on it, held in place by a double stack of foam cork dots, and then I have a spritzer that matches each one of them. And then the rest of it over here, this is all of my remaining stamps. Retired issue, as well as stamp sets that I bought from other companies. Dollar stamps that I've put into collections from Michaels. And they're all stored in Recollections photo boxes by theme. So I've got 2 that are alphabet. I've got 1 that's animals, arts and baking, beverage and food. One thing to keep in mind, okay, back up. I've determined that I'm a flipper. I like to take and flip through my stamps. And when I saw something on Pinterest of a gal doing this, and of course now I can't find that one, I thought that's how I want to store my stamps, so that's what I went with. One thing to keep in mind if you decide to go this route, Recollections boxes and the photo boxes from Hobby Lobby are not the same size. Hobby Lobby boxes will not allow you to store the DVD cases horizontally. They're just a slight narrower than the Recollections boxes. So if you're going to do this, take advantage of when Recollections boxes go on sale and stock up on those. I have an inspiration shelf up here of some quotes and just miscellaneous stamps that I use here and there, but I have them more because they inspire me. And then these are all my boxes of finished cards for every occasion, stored by occasion, and they just sit really nice up there on that shelf that Bob built me above my window. And then one last thing to show you as we go into the last minute, and this is my marker storage. This is on, these are all my Stampin' Up! Markers in PVC. Then I have my watercolor pencils, my Blendabilities, and then all my other miscellaneous La Plumes, Karawinkas, and Perma markers, as well as my watercolor pencils that are non-SU and my generic coloring pencils. And then behind that is a tray that is made from 1x4 trim board, divided into 4-inch sections to make cubbies for all of my tools. Below that, I have my file drawers, and I'll show you in another one what's in those, but then I've got all of my embossing folders, and then the bottom 2 shelves are all Sizzix, and then this side end cap is all of my Cricut cartridges that belong to me and my sister-in-law Rhonda, who is also a part of my Stampin' Up! Team. So that's my immediate studio tour. Shows you where I keep all of my supplies and how I keep them organized. I want to thank you for visiting my studio this morning. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I will get back with you. Also, if you enjoy the studio tour or want to see more of how I store things more up close, click the like button. And I'd love to have you as a subscriber. I'd love to have you in my studio every time I'm coming in to play. Creative blessings and have a great weekend.